Hey, welcome to the Relentless Positivity Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Martin. So, my guest today is Mark Barnes, and he was a longtime educator, entrepreneur, and he's a co author of Hacking Life After 50 10 Ways to Beat Father Time and Live a Long, Healthy, Joy Filled Life. And he's on a quest to live past 100 and bring anyone interested along for the ride. So, thanks for coming on, Mark.
Hey, Joe, I really am thrilled to be here. I love your show and everything you talk about. I think we're on the same wavelength, so it should be a good conversation.
Absolutely. So, I'm definitely along for the ride. I'm shooting for that 100 too. Let's talk about this. Where'd you grow up, and what were you into as a kid? What was your thing as a kid?
Well, I grew up in Northeast Ohio, and I still live in a suburb of Cleveland, so I'm a lifelong Clevelander. Um, yeah, I grew up playing sports. I was into everything, when I was young: basketball, baseball, football, all of it. I aspired to be a pro athlete, like many young people who are in sports, and realize that that's a different group there.
Right.
But I ran a little cross country and track in college, so I continued that, and I went into education after college. I taught for a couple of decades, right here again in a suburb of Cleveland, Ohio, and that's where I am.
That's awesome. So, are you a long suffering Cleveland sports fan?
Long suffering is about as apt a description as you can have. Yes. Yeah, I like all sports, but I'm really a diehard Browns fan. And so, we're at that time of year right now that it's the season of hope. You always have
Yeah.
hope. That's typically, unfortunately, that's about all you have as a Browns fan.
Hey, kudos for you sticking with your team, though. You could have bailed on them a long time ago. So kudos
No,
for you.
that's true. I love them.
That's your team. All right. So why education? Why did you choose to go that route?
Well, I said I was an athlete early on, and I love sports, and I competed in college, and honestly, I didn't really have great direction leaving college. I graduated with a degree in communications, and there's so many things you can do, but you don't really home in on one thing with that. But right out of college, I really, even before I got a regular job, I started coaching. And I had some friends in education, and a good buddy of mine said, "Hey, we've got a coaching job, ninth grade basketball." And I'm like, "Oh, I love basketball. I'll do that." And and then another tennis came up, and they said, "Hey, we need a tennis coach." So, I was coaching, and I was realizing that what I really loved was working with kids. And one day, the same guy that got me the first coaching job said, "I'm surprised you never thought about teaching, because you really do love kids." So, I went back to school for a couple more years. I got my teaching license, and I was very fortunate. A year later, I was in the classroom, and I was seventh, eighth grade, and then a little bit of 10th grade for 23 years
Wow.
before I left. Now, talk about aging myself. I left the classroom 11 years ago.
Wow. That's a heck of a run for someone who didn't think they were going to do it. So I kind of took an opposite route. I was getting my master's in PE and thought I was going to be a PE teacher and coach and all that. So I started coaching, and I told these kids, "Hey man, I love y'all, but I can only spend 2 to 3 hours with y'all. I can't spend all day and after school with you." So I took a different route. So kudos to you, man. You spend all day with these kids and then coach them afterwards. You really got to love them for sure. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, and what you said, you still got education in your blood, man, because
yeah,
you're still teaching when you think about it. And a lot of professions involve education and teaching and leading and being a mentor. It's just all about what you know. So, yeah, I loved it though. I still, to this day, I miss the kids. When people say, "What do you miss about teaching?" It's not so much the grind, because it is a grind.
sure.
But I really do miss kids. Kids are a blast.
Yeah, I've been trying to get out of coaching for a long time. It's just because my schedule, but I can't leave the kids, man. I
Sure.
coach middle school, so we have the seventh and eighth graders. Then you coach
Awesome.
up to your seventh graders, and you're like, "Hey, coach, you can be here next year." When I was like, "Oh man, I guess I will be." So,
Yeah,
but
it's
you
good
love it,
fun.
man. It's tough. So it's tough to leave. So, what happened when you turned 50? You turned 50, and you're like, "Hey, I need to make some changes."
Yeah, well, my parents both lived into their 90s. They're both gone now, but they lived into their 90s. And, so right away I had good genes. So I thought, boy, living long and old into the elderly age is a good thing. So they were in their 80s when I was 50. But, I noticed that they started to decline pretty poorly. They both had dementia, Alzheimer's. And the last few years of their life was pretty tough. And their memory was bad. And it was hard on the family. We were caring for them. And, I've got kids, and I want to see my kids grow up and maybe have grandkids. And and just to explore this wonderful world that we live in. And I thought, man, I want to live to 90, maybe even 100, but I want it to be a healthy 100. So, I was never in horrendous physical condition, but I did get to a point where I got pretty lazy. When I got to around 50, I was at my heaviest. I was about 30 pounds more than I am right now. And again, I was never a huge guy. So it wasn't like people were going, "Oh my God, look at you. You need
Yeah.
to, mix in some salads," or anything like that. But, I didn't feel good. And
Mhm.
again, I just started thinking, boy, I want to get to that place, and I don't want to uh, be in the condition my parents are late in life. So I got to do something. And, as an educator, you're also a researcher, you're always learning and trying to get better at your craft. So I just started researching. I started reading everything I could get my hands on about health and fitness. And we're not, my co-author Jim and I, we're not doctors, we're not nutritionists, and we say that in the book. We're always very transparent about that. We're educators, we're researchers, and we're practitioners. So when I would learn some things, I'd say, you know what, this sounds good, let me try this.
Right.
And I just we also talk about incrementalism in Hacking Life After 50. So, I started taking things in very small increments. I didn't like fruits and vegetables. I was never that person. I was on the standard American diet, which is not healthy, as you
Yeah.
know. So, that's where I gained the weight and didn't feel good. I started just slowly, I started with a smoothie, mixing in a little bit of spinach and some berries and other things into a smoothie. Tasted good. So I'm like, all right, well, I can get this stuff into my diet. And then I just started looking at the other things too, that impact health, your emotional health, how can you be emotionally healthy, and things like meditation and deep breathing and sleep, all of these things. And my co-author, Jim, he's also an educator. We started talking about this stuff a few years ago. We found that we love talking about it and sharing our practices. And we said, hey, we should put this stuff in a book. So here we are.
Here we are. Yeah. So you mentioned the book. I'm gonna do the title again because I love the title. So it's life hacking life after 50, 10 ways to beat father time and live a long, healthy, joy-filled life. And I love that you included joy in there. So that's pretty cool because most people, they think about fitness and health being, oh, it's a grind. I gotta
Mhm.
do this. No, you get to do this. It's for you. It's good for you. It's gonna make you feel better. So what is joy to you? Why did you include that?
Yeah, well, we think joy filled is a huge part of it, because when Jim and I are talking about our lives, we find that we're really happy guys.
Yeah.
We're both, our kids are grown now, and Jim's retired, and I run a business, but I don't work as much as I used to. And we talk about exploration. There's so many things out there in the world we want to do. So, we feel like we have a lot of joy, so we want to include that. So to me, we talk about purpose. One of the first chapter in the book is about finding purpose in life after 50, because a lot of people lose that. They say,
Right.
okay, I've done everything already in my first act of life. Now I'm in sort of the latter act two maybe, and I don't have that much left. What's my why? So for
Yeah.
me, joy is understanding your purpose and your why. You get up in the morning, you've got something to do, you take pride in things, and you're fulfilled.
Mm.
The cup's half full, it's not half empty. So that's what joy is to me, and that's a big part of what we talk about in Hacking Life After 50.
I think that's awesome because I used to work for the government. That was my first job coming out of college, working in the health and fitness area for the government. And we see these people, they would, they get their 40 years in, they retire, and they would, Malado would die within 6 months in a year. They would pass away because that's all they knew. They worked, they came to work, they
Mhm.
went home and repeat for 40 years. No joy, no purpose. Once that purpose of going to work was gone, what's life now? So I think that's
Yeah.
so awesome that you include that in there, and then that's the longevity part. You're not just trying to get to 100; you're going to get there in a good way. You're not just
Yeah, right. We call it a healthy 100, because I
yeah,
have people, I've talked to people before and talked about wanting to live to 100, and they say, oh man, I would never want to do that. And I said, well, why would you not want to live as long as you could live? And they say, well, because, there's that stigma around living long, because we just think of people who are elderly, 80s, 90s, whatever. They're sickly, they don't feel good. They're angry, they're upset, depressed, whatever. And people are like, I don't want to be that way. I'd rather, when I feel good, I'd rather just, drift off someday. But
yeah.
I said, that's why we call it a healthy 100 all the time. I say, no, 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 we're talking about a healthy 100. I say, if you could live, do you feel good now? If people say yes, well, would you want to continue living as long as you could, feeling the way you feel now? Well, sure. That's what we're going for.
That's it. And I think a big part of that, what you coach about the momentum mindset. Can you talked a little bit about that?
Yeah, yeah, and that's a big piece, and really there's threads of that throughout the entire book. We refer to it often, so we spend a chapter talking about it. The momentum mindset is a set of attitudes that we either have or we have to create or nurture that are founded on the idea of growth. And we're saying no matter how old you are, you're continuing to grow, intellectually, creatively, with that sense of purpose. So if you can have that mindset, and we give some strategies in the book about how to nurture that. And I'll tell you, one of them right away is one I know you're a fan of, Joe, and it's goal setting.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Again, when we get later in life, people feel like they don't have goals anymore. So we talk about saying what first identify your shortcomings or the things that you think are bad in your life. Well, now let's set some goals around those. What can you do to make that better? With a lot of people, it's physical. We getting older. I've got some inflammation or some bursitis, whatever. I don't feel good. Maybe I feel like I'm overweight. I'm sedentary. Let's start setting some goals and let's work incrementally to improve that. And we bring that momentum mindset up constantly throughout.
That's it. Yeah, and just keep at it. That's thing what you guys keep preaching. It doesn't have to happen all overnight. Just stay at it. It's a lifetime goal you're shooting for here. So I love that you preach that. Hey, if you can get up and fog a mirror, you still got a chance. You're still in the fight. So I love that you can keep going at any age, and you can start at any time. That's a big part of this book as well. So, in your research, what is the common thing that prevents most people from living that healthy lifestyle?
Well, oftentimes we talk about sarcopenia, which is the loss of muscle mass and bone degeneration. And as you age, especially if you're sedentary, these things happen. I mean, we actually start losing muscle mass in our 40s.
Yeah.
And if you're not working to maintain and even build muscle every decade of your life, you are going to lose it. So the fear there, the real concern, especially as you get well after 50 into your 60s, 70s, is falling down. And at age 65 and beyond, 1 in 4 people age 65 or older fall down every year.
Oh, wow.
And that's tens of millions of people who are falling. Now, a lot of times you slip and fall and you get right back up. But oftentimes especially when you get up even older, 70s, 80s, you fall down, you wind up breaking your hip. 1 in 4 people at that age who break their hip die within a year.
Right.
So, what we say is, first of all, let's not fall down. It sounds really simple, but in elderly people, what leads to falls is that loss of muscle mass, bone, flexibility, balance, all of those things. And you can enhance all of those with resistance training.
Yeah. So do we really need 80 and 9-year-olds out here lifting weights?
Yeah. It doesn't necessarily have to be weights per se, as in like dumbbells or anything like that, but it does have to be weight. It could be your body weight. So we give some basic strategies in Hacking Life After 50. And we call that hack reclaim muscle. Yeah. And we address that point right away, that some people are going to say, oh, wait a minute. I haven't been a weightlifter. I use my father as an example when I tell this story. My father lived in 93, and he was one of the fittest, strongest guys I've ever known. And I never saw him touch a weight, a dumbbell, a barbell, anything like a resistance band. I never saw him touch anything like that in his life. But this guy was the most active in ways that used the muscles that we need to use, that give you functional movement, getting up and down, pushing, pulling, squatting. And this is what he did. We have 5 kids in my family. Neither of my parents graduated from high school, middle-class people, middle-class jobs, and not a ton of money to go around. When we needed something done, my father did it. I saw him laying underneath cars in our driveway as I grew up constantly. And my mother would say, get out there and help your father. Well, I didn't know what I was doing. So I was basically handing him tools, but he's laying down on the ground underneath a car, and he's got a wrench and something is stuck. And I hear him groaning, and I see him turning, and his muscles are bulging, and he's twisting his body. That's resistance training.
Or
And,
absolutely.
and we're not asking people to get under cars, but we do give some very specific, simple ways that you can use your body to continue to maintain and build muscle mass, flexibility, and balance. And yeah, you
Uh,
have to do it. 80s, 90s.
yeah.
You want to live to a healthy 100, keep doing it. We work out hard 4 days a week. And I don't really use a ton of weights. I use body weight. I use resistance bands, things like that.
It's so, so important. I don't care what your age you are right now. If you're listening, it is the fountain of youth. Now, as soon as that muscle goes away, you are dependent on somebody else. That's when the assisted living comes in. That's when you got to have someone help you out. But the longer you can keep up that strength training, just like I said, you don't have to be out there with a power lifter up there, squatting 400 pounds. Use your own body weight, like you said, dumbbells, bands. It doesn't matter. TRX are great. I don't care how old you are. You can do anything on those. So, hey, if you're listening right now and you want to pick one exercise, strength resistant exercise, I think is the best one for an aging person.
Yeah, and Joe, I'll tell you, we have a Facebook page. It's called Life After 50s, and my co-author Jim Sturdivant, he's really into creative exercise. So he likes to build his own things at his house, and you'll use tools around the house. He put a wonderful post on our page recently. It shows him walking with a wheelbarrow that has weights in it. Now, in a wheelbarrow, you could put anything in there. You could put sand or dirt or whatever, anything you've got lying around that's heavy. And he's actually doing this in his basement, and he's pushing it across the basement. He's pulling it back across the basement. He's lifting, he's pushing, he's pulling. Those are the movements. And in this post, he said, just to people who are fans of the page, what kinds of creative things are you doing? And I got to tell you the stuff that came in. So there are people doing it, and we have people going, I'm 66, and I do this out in my yard, or, I'm mowing the yard and it's a gigantic yard and I'm pushing and pulling my lawnmower. There's so much you can do. So, just get creative and have fun with it.
That's it. It doesn't have to be miserable. Like I said, we're going for the joy part in all this. If you hate it, you don't have to do it. There's another way. There's so many ways to exercise out there. And go to that page and check it out. Get some more options. If you need some more options, go check that Facebook page out. So another strategy I really like of yours is called dabble. Now, first of all, what does that mean, and why is it so helpful?
Yeah, dabble. This really does speak to joy too. Dabble is about engagement, and again, after 50s, and especially when we get well into after 50s life, sometimes we cease to engage. We tend to be sedentary. We tend to say, I've done it all. My kids are grown. They're gone. Maybe I don't have grandkids, or they don't live close to me. I don't have a career anymore. Sometimes we lose people. Maybe I don't have a spouse. My spouse has passed, my siblings, my friends. And there's a lot of isolation and loneliness. So the key here is, don't sit around and wallow in loneliness, in anxiety, depression, saying I've got nothing left, because that's going to send you to the grave a whole lot faster.
Sure.
What we say is, the key is, and this goes back to momentum mindset, we want you to have a curious way about you. We want you to be adventurous. We want you to take risks, to try things that maybe you've never tried. One of the greatest times in life is after 50s, especially if you don't have a lot of responsibilities that you did when you were younger, because you have what we call time affluence, right? So here I am, and now I don't have to work 8 hours a day, and I don't have to drive my kids all over the place. I've got time on my hands, and what a marvelous gift, time. So now I'm going to say, what am I interested in that maybe I've never tried? And what is something I've wanted to do, a place I've wanted to visit that I've never gone? Travel is dabbling. So think of a thing you want to do, a place you want to visit. I want to learn a new language. I want to read about something that maybe in the past I wasn't sure if I was interested in. We don't get into politics, but one thing I would say is, think of a way you are, whether it's around politics or it's a mindset, and find a book on the opposite side of it. That's exploring, that's curious, and that opens up our minds. This is how you dabble. You engage with content, you engage with people, go meet new people, join new clubs. When you dabble, and we give lots of specific examples in Hacking Life After 50, you flourish, you thrive, and there's where joy comes from.
There you go. That's that mental and emotional health that we need work that sometimes get neglected, even if you're doing the physical stuff. That's great that you're the well-rounded program. So we just touching on a few of the things right here. I mean, there's 10 of them. We barely scratched the surface on this stuff. So you guys got to get the book. So at one time you were suffering from insomnia. I know we've had a lot of people that go across that. How did you cure yours?
Yeah, my doctor had labeled me as an insomniac. It was on my chart, you know. He's an insomniac, and every year we would talk about sleep, and I would say, yeah, I don't sleep well. I take a long time to fall asleep. I wake up a lot, then I stay awake. And you know, general care doctors, as great as they are, they're not specialists when it comes to stuff like that. So, you know, it was just simple things like, we'll take melatonin, which I tried and hated. And, you know, our body tends to make melatonin anyways. But again, when I got serious about overall health, the other problem, Joe, is I didn't value sleep. I used to
Yeah.
tell my doctor, I don't like sleep because sleep's a waste of time.
Yeah.
You know, so I got to that point when I was researching overall health to live to that healthy 100. And I learned that a big part of that is sleep. It's one of the most underrated things. In fact, you know, we start every chapter or hack in our book with the problem. So, you know, if it's about strength training, what's the problem? If it's about diet, well, the problem is we tend to eat the standard American diet, which is a killer. So the problem we actually call that chapter recharge, the one about sleep. The problem is sleep's underrated. Too
Yep.
many people just don't realize that you are recharging your body and your brain, your emotional well-being. All of those things are recharged with good sleep. There's tons of studies out there. We reference some of them in the book, but it's not heavy on that. And basically we just summarize all of them. And they say that you have to get 7 to 9 hours of good restorative sleep. So when I learned about this, I got serious about it. One of the things I did, and you don't have to do this, but if you can, we recommend it. Get some wearable technology with the biosensors, you know, whether it's a watch, an Apple Watch, a Fitbit. We're agnostic about the tech. We don't promote anyone. You know, I wear an Oura ring because I don't like to wear something on my wrist. But if you get one of these and you connect your app to your device or to your laptop, it will measure your sleep for you. And then you truly know if you're getting that sleep or not. And people will be surprised. I've talked to people, and I used to be one of these. I would say, I used to tell my doctor when I was in my early 50s, I'd say, well, I've been working on it. You know, I'm typically getting about 8 hours, you know, and she said, well, what does that mean? So I'd say, you know, well, I go to bed at this time, I get up at that time pretty consistently. And she said, yeah, but what does it look like when you're in bed? You know, and I'm like, well, I'm getting up to go to the bathroom 2 or 3 times. And, you know, sometimes I stay awake. And she says, so you're not really getting the sleep. You're just in bed that time. That's where that technology comes in, because it'll tell you precisely how many hours you slept, how much REM sleep you got, which is super important, how much deep sleep. All of these things you have to have that rebuild your cells. They literally regenerate the cells in your body, and you have to have that if you want to live long.
Yeah.
Because our cells break down every day. So I got intentional about that, and then I just started studying how do you do it. And I got to tell you, and I can't say this from a medical standpoint. I'm thinking you can cure insomnia. I always say I did that for me. I'm not going to sit here and tell everyone, if you're an insomniac, that you know you can cure it or I can cure it. But there are strategies that we outline in the book about how to approach sleep, that I'll tell you, we as practitioners have tried, and I sleep great now, and it's a part of me feeling better every day.
No, it's so, like you said, I love how you say it's underrated. It's so underrated. I tell my clients, hey, this is where the magic happens. When you're sleeping, that's when all the good stuff's going on. All the workout stuff, that's when you're tearing the muscles down. You got to get this sleep, get in there, repair, fix those hormones. A lot going on there. So if you address your sleep, you can see everything's going to get so much better from there. So we've mentioned a few times, but how do we get a copy of this book? We got to read this thing.
Yeah, well, the book's out now, and you can it's everywhere. I mean, most people buy on Amazon. You'll find it easily on Amazon. If you're a Barnes and Noble person, it'll be there. Your local bookstores may not have it, but you can walk in and ask them for it, and they can order it because it's available all over the world. So, if you just want to go right to it and learn more about us and about the book, you can go to after50slife.com. Our Facebook page is After 50s Life. There's stuff on the website about me, about my co-author Jim Sturdivant, links to the book, all that stuff. Plus, we're putting content up constantly, free content too. So we'd love
Awesome.
for people to buy the book. We think it'll help you out a lot. But even if you don't, join us on our site and at After 50s Life on Facebook. There's daily content, strategies, videos, things you'll love. We're all
Awesome.
in this together, Joe, on
That's
that
right.
quest to a healthy 100. Let's
That's
outrun
right.
Father Time.
Let's do it, man. Hey, this is great. There's so many things we just touched on this right here. There's some great strategies in the book. I was able to get a copy of it ahead of time, man. Thank you for that, by the way. A lot of good stuff in there that you guys are missing out on if you don't get, but you can get some free stuff on there. But hey, you want the premium stuff, got to get the book. That's where the real stuff is. So, hey, if you're listening right now, please share this episode. There's someone out here that needs to hear about some of these tips. They need to hear about how to get a momentum mindset. Maybe they got that down. They just need to dabble in something as they get a little bit older and fix that mental and physical health out there as well. So, and if you're listening right now, and I think we've earned a 5-star review today. So you go ahead and give us a good, nice review. I think we would appreciate that. So thanks for listening. And thanks for Mark, what you're doing out there. People need to hear this message that, hey, it's not over if you turn 50. It's just beginning.
Thanks, Joe. I've enjoyed it. Let's do it again sometime.
We'll do it, man. We'll do that. So thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you guys next week on the Relentless Positivity Podcast.